Hi, my name is Rose, and I'm an empath, and so I just want to share some stories that I've learned over life, and some of my experience to help with my own growth and healing, and hopefully help you in some way. Now, again, these are my side. I'm not a psychologist, clinician. I don't have any of that kind of stuff. These are just strictly my stories that I'm sharing. And I'm going to go back many, many years ago to when I was like 20 years old. Okay. So this is when I'm young, not very smart in the dating realm at all. And I met this guy. He just happened to call, real estate, kind of talking, wanting to talk to my mom about, the house and stuff. And we got talking and we realized, we shared a lot of similar things, whether likes, values, I think even birthdays, right? At least years were different. He was significantly older than me. But to me, that was mature, right? So we decided to go out to dinner, went to Olive Garden, had a great dinner. I mean, things progressively moved really fast. And when I say narcissist, I guess that was probably my first involvement with a narcissist, not realizing it at the time. Because again, I was 20, and as I look back now, I'm like, oh my God, so many red flags. Completely withdrew me from my family. So went out and he started, he even wanted to get my name tattooed on his arm like a month, not even a month in, I think. So things went relatively fast. I quickly ended up staying over, and then it got to the point where he didn't even want me to leave, to the point where he almost tied me to the bed. That was serious. Like, I couldn't leave. He took my keys to my car at one point, so I couldn't leave. I ended up somehow getting my daughter to my mom's house, and my daughter stayed there with my mom. Well, I did what I could to get out of this relationship, right? Because it wasn't safe. It wasn't safe for any of us. Um, so he would follow me, even like I had to drop out of college. He would drop out. He would register and sit next to me in my college classes, because he didn't trust me in the classes. Or he'd sit outside the classroom and see who I was talking to, who I was sitting next to. Why are you sitting next to him? I'm like, I've been sitting next to him all semester. It's like, what's the big deal? I don't know who he, I don't know who he is. We're not, unless we're partners, because my instructor says, pair up with the person on your left or pair up with the person on your right. It wasn't all of that. And so I guess I should have known. But then he started playing those mind games, which I wasn't ready for at 20 years old. Um, and so I wake up one morning, um, and he has a noose hanging in the garage. And he threatened to hang me. And if not, he was going to hang himself. That's overwhelming for someone at age 20. I'll be honest. And then he started saying he had split personalities. And he became a woman one day. And he was shaving his legs and his underarms and everything. It was like really weird because I'm not used to that. I haven't been around that before. So for me, it was kind of different. It's like, okay, well, I'm not into women. Even if you're biologically a male, not, at this point in time, I already knew the relationship was over. Um, one time he got really mad, slapped me with a remote. And I remember going over to my doctor and I said, I did what I could to kind of keep him out of the doctor's office, right? Because I knew I was sick and I knew I wanted to talk to my doctor. And he forced his way into the doctor's office. And I even told my doctor, I don't want him in here. He's physically abusive to me. And I showed him the bruise from when this person, who, yes, now are in and out of jail now, took the remote and slapped me with the remote control to the TV several times. He hit me and left me bruises. And I showed my doctor. My doctor goes, oh, well, you should get out of that relationship. No kidding. Can you not have him in the doctor's office? And he still allowed him in. And he didn't stop it. And he didn't change anything. And the doctor goes, well, that's what'd you do to deserve it? And I'm just like, really? Like, this is the mid-90s. Granted, I guess things are different than they are now. But I just wanted to kind of share as I think through, some of the stuff that happened back then and where we're at now and kind of the effects it had on me, because I still think about that. And again, this was over a pattern of maybe 6 months, start to finish. So from that, it went into several arguments where the neighbors would call the police and he would be gone. When the police would knock at the door, he would leave out of the garage and they wouldn't stop him. And I would ask for help. Can you get me out? Can you get me back to my hometown? Because it was about 45 minutes away. And they said, no. I said, he took the keys to my car. Can you call my mother? No. Can you do anything to help me? They're like, well, I don't know what you did to get in this situation. Wow. And that's how I was treated by a certain police department about, I don't know, 45 minutes away just before you go into the Grapevine or the Ultimate Pass here in California. So I was treated that way. And then I think it finally came down to one time he had his sister jump me, right? Because I was forcibly raped, obviously. I was tied down and forced. And I ultimately ended up pregnant. I didn't want to be pregnant. I definitely didn't want to be pregnant by him. He had, I guess, somehow CPS found out. And CPS called me in, and they actually wanted to examine my daughter as well, even though my daughter was never there. And the next thing I knew was they had me in. They did the usual questioning and everything. And then CPS had asked me a few questions and, said, well, he is a registered sex offender. Didn't know. We didn't have Megan's Law back then. We couldn't go on the internet and just look up somebody's name. And I went, whoa, right? And this is where I guess some of your religion and beliefs and morals and values kick in. Because I'm only a few weeks, like 6, maybe 8 weeks pregnant. And I'm now pregnant with a child molester and rapist baby. And he's abusive. And they let me know that, even though he did these things, and he'll probably be in and out of jail for the rest of his life, he still had legal right to visit this child if I had it. So then you think about, do I want to have this child? Where do my beliefs stand? How do I feel? Does this child going to grow up and have the same thing, be treated the same way I was being treated? What kind of risks are there? Right? So all of that goes through your mind. And, very difficult times. And I have no problem admitting that. And a few weeks later, I guess I misbehaved or whatever. So he had his sister jump me. She kneed me several times in the gut. I was taken by ambulance to a local hospital. He went over there before the police, removed my IVs, and took me out the back door. I guess he knew the nurse or the doctor that was on shift. And they allowed him to remove my IV and remove me from the hospital. A few days later, he got into another fight, right? Because I want to go home. At this point in time, it's over. I already told him I don't like, I can't be this way. And he wanted pork chops or something for dinner that night. And he literally was hitting me with a belt while I cooked. And we got into the car because the neighbors could hear me screaming every time he whipped me with that leather belt. So we get in the car and we get into a fight. So we're driving through this area between 2 freeways along a river. And he's hitting and yelling. And then he wants to force me to do sexual things with him. And at that point, I open the door and jump out of a moving car. And I remember rolling onto the ground. I mean, we were out in the country, so I rolled into the dirt. And I tried to get up and start running. He eventually came back, picked me up, and threw me in the car. The good and bad things are, I survived. There were times I wish I didn't. It was very, very hard. Ultimately, I had a miscarriage. Wouldn't be surprising, right? My beliefs regarding abortion really, really took heart to me, right? Because that's going through your mind. This is still my child. It's still half my DNA. But half the DNA is that of a rapist and a murderer. They didn't ask to be born, nor did I ask them to be born, nor did I attempt to try to get pregnant. That was my case. I wasn't in that kind of relationship with him. So I ended up in the hospital. The good or bad thing is I was in the hospital by where I lived, or where my mom was. And I called my mom to pick me up from the hospital. And that's how I got out of that situation. And I had my friend, I'm not going to mention his name, but he's a friend from high school. And he helped me get everything I needed changed, like my cell phone number, cell phones, or pagers. We had pagers back then. That's how old I am. We didn't have cell phones back then. Getting that changed, getting my password changed, just helping me reestablish my life and let me know that I'm okay as a person. And I'll forever be thankful to my friend Robbie, who was there for me when I needed him the most. But that was difficult. And then I had to heal through all of that. And then I started going back to college, right? And now this man that left me for dead on the side of the road, and ultimately I miscarried, right, is now going to my college. And he's leaving notes on my car. Or he's walking past my classroom looking in, staring at me. He's leaving notes that I will always love you. If you have someone else's baby, I will kill you and that baby. And he did that for months. And there was nothing I could do about it back then. He wouldn't answer the door for a restraining order. He could see them on the cameras and out the window. He knew not to answer. He worked from home in real estate, so he never left the house. Ultimately, he ended up in jail a few years later. The police out in that San Joaquin County ended up dropping the charges against his sister for jumping me, because ultimately it was my word against hers. Although there was the hospital chart, there was no proof she was saying that I tripped and fell or something. That's what that happened was. And then ultimately he wasn't going to testify against his sister now that we broke up. So she was let go. And then ultimately we had broken up and I didn't want to see him again. And I couldn't get him served for a restraining order. And then he didn't show up for the other restraining order. I think he just did that to play games to try to get me to go back to court so he can see me one last time. He was probably standing in the parking lot watching me. But when I look back, those should have been red flags. And back in the 90s, things were a lot different than they are now. We don't have cell phones at every corner. We couldn't just walk up. The neighbors are like, I can't call where your mom lives because it's long distance and I don't have long distance. Or I can't pay for long distance. And for probably 15 years, I didn't even go into that city. That's how much trauma there was. And it took me a really long time to go down one of the main streets. Just because that's where the house was. It was in a certain neighborhood off a really busy street in a busy intersection, which ultimately they built outlet stores. And someone used to ask me, do you want to go to the outlets? You want to go to these outlets out in the city? And I'm like, heck no, I don't want to go in that city. And luckily now we have Megan's Law, so I can go on there and see if he's in or out of jail. I can see where he's at. Luckily he's been in Southern California, so I haven't really worried about it. But those are certain flags that happened that made me who I am and made me a little more understanding of situations of what people are in. So when you go through things or you're in things, just remember that there is light on the other side of the tunnel. At times I didn't want to be alive. I remember going, God, I can't want to wake up to this again. I don't want to wake up being tied to the bed. I don't want to be woken up to be forced to cook for a man and then beaten. On my birthday, I know it's his birthday every year. You think I don't think about that? I do. Because we celebrated our birthday together that year, and it was just like, I turned 19. I just turned 19, I think. So, it sucks. And those are red flags. And now that I think about now that I know what a narcissist was, how I should have ran the very first day when he's telling me how much he loved me and what a great person I was and how we should live together and we should need to get married. And, it's our first date, right? When you're 19, you're like, oh my God, he's telling me everything I wanted to hear and everything I wanted in life. But in reality, it wasn't the truth. It was just this way to suck me in and control me. But I got through it. I'm alive now. But I just wanted to share my story and my truth and my reality and hope you will heal and learn from some of the mistakes I made and ways that I'm growing now as an adult. Take care and be safe.